This is absolutely unacceptable, Marissa. Evan Lorne's voice thundered across the sleek glass conference room of Horizon Biotech, each word slicing through the tension like a knife. A few colleagues shrank back in their seats. I sat motionless, heart pounding, feeling dozens of eyes burning into me. What was supposed to be a routine quarterly review had turned into my public shaming. My name is Marissa Clay, and after 17 years at Horizon Biotech in Portland, Oregon, this was how my journey was ending. At 51 years old, I had built my entire career around precision, ethics, and scientific integrity. Every safety protocol, every audit, every compliance report, handled with painstaking care. Every intern and new technician trained personally under my watch. The Department of Health Compliance Board cited major documentation failures, Evan continued, his fists clenching the meeting notes. $9,100,000, 0 cents in research grants. Gone, he barked, slamming his palm onto the table with a sharp crack. The urge to defend myself rose, but I swallowed it. This wasn't about truth. It was about optics, about protecting Horizon's shiny new merger with Chord Industries. Ever since that deal 6 months ago, quality standards had quietly eroded. Speed mattered more than safety. Image mattered more than facts. The new corporate hires played by a completely different set of rules, ones written in disappearing ink. Due to compliance failures tied to the grant investigation, Evans said coolly, Marissa Clay's employment is terminated, effective immediately. Security will assist with her office clearance. I rose silently. I smoothed the lapel of my charcoal gray jacket, the same one I'd worn on my very first day, and walked steadily out. Behind me, the room broke into frantic whispers. As I passed the biotech floor, I caught sight of Dr. Jeremy Hale, one of Medcore's prized recruits. He glanced up, his face flickering with guilt, before snapping back to his computer. That tiny, involuntary reaction confirmed what I'd long suspected. Only now, I had something they didn't know about. Long before the merger chaos, I had been keeping a second set of records, not just the ones Horizon wanted in the system, but a personal archive. Every deviation, every protocol ignored, every shortcut taken under executive order. Call it paranoia, call it foresight. But today, it was about to become my weapon. It was time to show Horizon Biotech what real accountability looked like. Over the years, I had watched brilliant young researchers rise and just as quickly fall. Some cracked under the relentless pressure to produce rapid publications. Others chased accolades so fiercely they abandoned caution, cutting corners to get there. But through it all, I had been the constant, the quiet steward of integrity, the one who fought to keep our lab science unimpeachable. I started at Horizon Biotech when it was still a scrappy independent firm, specializing in rare autoimmune disorders. Back then, every tiny breakthrough was a cause for celebration, not a line item for stockholders. Our founder, Dr. Meredith Lang, believed that patients bred precision. Good science, she'd often say, tapping her glasses against her notepad, takes time and respect. When Dr. Lang retired 6 years ago, everything shifted. The new leadership valued flashy patents and grant windfalls over painstaking research. And when the merger with Chord Industries happened 6 months ago, Horizon's soul all but vanished. I packed my office slowly, fitting 17 years of dedication into a single cardboard box. Photos of research teams that had long since scattered. Certificates for excellence in lab management. And tucked between them, a handwritten note from Dr. Lang herself, thanking me for standing firm when it mattered. Marissa, do you need help? I turned to see Nathan Kim, a young lab assistant I had personally mentored not long ago. His face showed a mix of sympathy and uncertainty. Thank you, Nathan, I said softly, but I've got it under control. I paused, offering a final piece of advice. Keep thorough notes, especially when it comes to the trial documentation. His brows furrowed slightly. Is that what this is about? The trial records? Among other things, I replied carefully. Protect yourself. Always document the truth, even when it's inconvenient. After he nodded and left, I opened the bottom drawer of my desk one last time. Inside was a plain, battered leather journal, my private ledger. Each page was filled with dates, names, protocol breaches, evidence of misconduct MedCorp had tried to bury, particularly concerning Dr. Hale's rushed clinical trials and the tampered chemical inventory reports. I tucked the journal securely into my bag, then took one long look around the office that had shaped so much of my adult life. The battered coffee mug, the corkboard filled with research notes, the panoramic window overlooking the city skyline, the view that had kept me company through endless nights of work. At the door, I turned off the lights, murmuring a soft goodbye to the woman I once was. That night, at my kitchen table, I spread the journal open. Page after page stared back at me, a silent, damning record. And tomorrow, the world would hear the truth. Pages of notes, printed screenshots with timestamps, copies of emails that contradicted the official narratives. Slowly, a clear timeline emerged, charting exactly when Horizon's research integrity had started to crumble. It all traced back 3 months ago, when Dr. Jeremy Hale launched a fast-track protocol for a new autoimmune therapy. By regulation, certain chemical compounds required specialized containment with usage tightly restricted to small, controlled intervals. Yet the lab logs showed absurd gaps, chemicals allegedly used mere hours apart, in quantities that violated every safety standard we had ever followed. When I questioned it, Evan Lawrence shrugged me off. Dr. Hale has executive approval to accelerate the trials, he said coldly, no further clarification given, no room for debate. Then came the discrepancies in clinical results. Data gaps that were magically filled days later with numbers that looked too perfect. When I flagged the irregularities, Evan's reply was razor sharp. MedCorp uses different statistical models, Marissa. Stay focused on operations, not analytic. The final piece of the puzzle hit me like a gut punch. When I reviewed my own security logs, I found 3 separate incidents where my ID badge had been used to authorize document changes. At times, I wasn't even on the premises. Someone had forged my digital footprint to validate illegal edits to critical compliance records. Records now being wielded to destroy my career. My hands shook with fury. 17 years of spotless service, gone. I had trained generations of researchers, fought for ethical standards, built Horizon's reputation from the ground up. And now, I was their scapegoat. My phone buzzed. A text from Nathan. Everyone's stunned. Interviews for your replacement already started. Hale looks rattled. Good. He should be scared. I inhaled deeply, steadying my heartbeat. Then I powered up my laptop. One by one, I began assembling the evidence. First, a detailed report to the Institutional Ethics Review Board, exposing the falsified data and naming everyone involved. Next, a file for OSHA complete with screenshots, logs, and a breakdown of chemical storage breaches. As I worked, the anger faded. What remained was clarity. This wasn't about revenge. This was about restoring the truth. About reminding people that science serves humanity, not quarterly earnings. By midnight, the reports were polished, saved, and queued for submission at sunrise. I closed my laptop, stood, and walked to the window. The city lights of Portland glittered in the darkness, and for the first time in weeks, my heart felt steady. Tomorrow, everything would change. Not just for me, but for Horizon Biotech and the empire that thought they could erase me. Before heading to bed, I laid out my clothes for the next morning. The same charcoal gray blazer I had worn on my first day, and again on what they thought was my last. But tomorrow, I had one final duty to fulfill. One final act of stewardship for the truth I had guarded all these years. Morning light streamed through the kitchen blinds as I sipped coffee, reviewing every page one last time. Every accusation backed by undeniable evidence. Every claim verifiable through independent audit. Meticulous, because that was who I had always been. I sent the emails within minutes of each other, first to the Institutional Ethics Review Board, then to OSHA. The weight that lifted from my shoulders was almost dizzying. Whatever followed, the truth was no longer buried. My phone buzzed almost immediately. Horizon Biotech appeared on the caller ID. I let it ring into voicemail. Another call. Evan Lorne's number this time. Decline. I didn't need their panic, their threats, or their last-minute bargaining. The evidence spoke louder than any apology could. I dressed carefully, sliding my arms into the familiar jacket. In my bag, I placed a sealed envelope containing hard copies of every document I had submitted. And then I drove to Horizon Biotech one last time. The front desk receptionist, Elise, looked visibly startled when she saw me. Mrs. Clay, I thought. We were told. I'm just dropping something off, I said calmly, offering her the envelope. Please make sure this reaches the board of directors. It's important. I turned to leave, but footsteps echoed down the hallway behind me. Dr. Jeremy Hale was rushing toward me, his face taut with strain. Marissa, wait, he called out. I paused, letting him catch up. Up close, the toll of sleepless nights was written all over his face, hollow cheeks, bloodshot eyes. Can we talk? He asked in a hoarse whisper. Privately? I don't think we have anything left to discuss, Dr. Hale, I replied, my voice steady. Please, he pressed, glancing anxiously toward Evan's office. What happened yesterday? It wasn't right. I tried to say something, but you stayed silent, I cut him off. Just like you stayed silent when you fast-tracked trials. Just like you stayed silent when my credentials were used without my consent. His face went pale. The bravado he once carried evaporated. How did you? His voice cracked. 17 years, Dr. Hale, I said softly. 17 years of knowing every system, every protocol, every audit trail. And now, all of it, every lie, every shortcut, was finally exposed. If you've been standing with Marissa through this journey, don't forget to subscribe. The next chapter will reveal just how far the truth can shake an empire. I kept my voice calm and measured. Did you really think I wouldn't notice? It was Evan, Dr. Hale whispered, glancing over his shoulder to make sure no one overheard. Theater. He said we needed the results fast-tracked for the MedCorp quarterly report. He said you were being difficult, slowing everything down with all your unnecessary checks. Those checks are what make our research legitimate, I said quietly. They're what keep people safe. But it doesn't matter now. A drain from his face. What? What have you done? My job, I said simply. The same job I'd been doing for 17 years, whether anyone appreciated it or not. Without another word, I turned and walked out of Horizon Biotech for the last time, my head held high. By noon, my phone was lighting up with calls from unknown numbers. By 2 o'clock, the local news was already buzzing. OSHA inspectors had arrived unannounced at Horizon's research division. By 4, I received an email that made my heart catch. From Dr. Meredith Lang. Marissa, I was contacted today by the Ethics Review Board regarding your report. I always knew you were the moral center of this lab. Would you be willing to meet? There may be more buried that needs to come to light. I leaned back, a small, satisfied smile playing at the corners of my mouth. Dr. Lang had been retired for years, but her name still commanded immense respect in the scientific community. If she were stepping in, Horizon and MedCorp had no idea how deep the reckoning was about to go. 2 days later, I sat across from her in the sun-drenched sitting room of her Portland home. At 77, she was still sharp-eyed, quick-witted, her house lined with scientific journals, framed awards, and family photos. They've suspended all research activities pending investigation, Dr. Lang said as she poured tea into delicate china cups. OSHA found exactly what you reported, serious violations in chemical handling. The ethics board is moving forward with a full inquiry into the data manipulation. I nodded slowly, my hands warming against the teacup. And Dr. Hale? I asked. Placed on administrative leave, she confirmed. He's cooperating, for now. Dr. Lang studied me over the rim of her cup. But there's something else, isn't there? She said softly. Something you didn't include in your reports. I hesitated. She had always been perceptive, dangerously so. The grant wasn't pulled only because of compliance issues, I admitted. At least, not the ones they tried to pin on me. Her brows lifted, sharp with curiosity. Go on? I took a breath. 3 weeks ago, I discovered inconsistencies in the preliminary trial data submitted for the NIH grant. The reported patient improvement rates were almost too perfect. Too consistent, statistically improbable in every way. When I compared the raw data sets to the final report sent to the NIH, the discrepancies jumped out immediately. I reached into my bag, pulled out a slim folder, and slid it across Dr. Lang's coffee table. The NIH didn't reject our grant because of compliance technicalities, I said quietly. They rejected it because someone on the review committee flagged the same statistical anomalies I did. Dr. Lang opened the folder. As she read, her mouth set into a hard line. And Evan knew this? She asked, her voice low. He had to, I replied. I sent him a full analysis 2 days before the grant was officially declined. I took a slow sip of tea. When the rejection came through, he needed someone to blame. Someone expendable. I shrugged. Not Dr. Hale, of course. He was their star, their direct line to MedCore's favor. So they sacrificed you, Dr. Lang said, snapping the folder closed. 17 years of impeccable service discarded. Welcome to corporate science, I said with a wry smile. Quite different from the lab you built. Indeed, she said grimly. She pushed the folder aside and fixed me with a piercing stare. Marissa, I'm forming an independent review panel. Some trusted colleagues from my university days are already on board. With your documentation and your testimony, we can make sure this doesn't get swept under the rug. Just then, my phone buzzed with a new email. I glanced down and blinked in surprise. It's from the National Institutes of Health, Office of Research Integrity, I said, scanning the message. They're requesting a formal interview regarding the Horizon grant application and everything that's happened since. Dr. Lang gave a small, satisfied nod. The dominoes are starting to fall, she said. Once one oversight body investigates, the others usually aren't far behind. She leaned closer, her voice gentler now. Marissa, what you've done, standing up for integrity when it would have been easier to walk away, is exactly what Horizon once stood for. She paused, her voice catching slightly. I'm deeply sorry the institution I founded failed you so badly. Her words struck something deep inside me. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt emotion rise in my throat. Thank you, I said, steadying my voice. This means more than you know. As I drove home from Dr. Lang's house, my phone rang again. A number I didn't recognize. I hesitated, then answered. Ms. Clay? This is William Harrington from the University of Washington's Medical Research Division. Dr. Lang suggested I reach out. We're looking for someone with your expertise to lead compliance and ethics training across our research programs. Would you be interested in discussing the opportunity? A deep sense of vindication swept through me. This fight had never been just about exposing corruption. It was about finding my rightful place again, somewhere my values were seen as strengths, not obstacles. The interview at the University of Washington Medical Research Division went better than I could have imagined. As I spoke about my background, my commitment to laboratory integrity, and the lessons learned from Horizon, I saw genuine respect reflected in the faces across the panel. They didn't see a troublemaker. They saw a professional who had refused to compromise. Your recommendation from Dr. Lang carries significant weight, said Dr. William Harrington, as he walked me to the lobby. But it's your handling of the Horizon situation that impressed the committee most. We need leaders who stand for something. I left that day with a formal offer in hand. Director of Research Integrity and Compliance Training, a role where I could set standards, teach ethics, and rebuild trust across multiple departments. Meanwhile, Horizon Biotech was unraveling faster than anyone could have predicted. The news channels were ablaze. OSHA had issued 27 citations against Horizon, several labeled serious violations. The fines alone topped $350,000, 0 cents, but the reputational damage was even greater. Even more damning, Dr. Jeremy Hale had cracked under pressure. He admitted to falsifying data at Evan Lauren's direction and handed over emails and recorded conversations that tied Horizon's misconduct directly to MedCore executives. 1 week after meeting with Dr. Lang, my phone rang again, but this time the voice was unexpected. "Miss Clay, this is Harold Winthrop, chairman of the board at Horizon Biotech. Would you be willing to meet with us? We're conducting an internal investigation alongside the regulatory inquiries, and your insight would be invaluable." My first instinct was to decline. They had abandoned me when it mattered most. But I thought of Dr. Lang and her quiet mission to salvage what Horizon once stood for. "I'll meet with you," I said, "but only with my legal counsel present." 2 days later, I walked back into the boardroom where I had once been publicly humiliated. Only now, the air had shifted. The board members looked exhausted, burdened by a storm of consequences. Evan's seat at the table sat conspicuously empty. "Where's Evan Lorne?" I asked as the meeting opened. Harold Winthrop cleared his throat. "Mr. Lorne has been terminated, effective immediately. We've also cut ties with several senior executives at MedCore, and a complete leadership restructure is underway." I nodded, keeping my expression neutral, though satisfaction burned quietly beneath the surface. "Miss Clay," Harold Winthrop continued, "on behalf of Horizon Biotech's board of directors, we owe you a profound apology. The circumstances surrounding your dismissal were not only unjust, they were potentially criminal." He glanced around the table before continuing. "The board has authorized me to offer you full reinstatement, along with a substantial compensation package for the damage done to your career and reputation." My attorney and I exchanged a brief look. We had anticipated something like this. "I appreciate the offer," I said evenly, "but I've accepted a position elsewhere." Relief flickered across their faces, until I added, "However, I would be willing to consult during your leadership transition, specifically to help rebuild your compliance systems and restore research integrity." The change was immediate, visible. They needed someone who knew the inner workings, someone who could help salvage Horizon's crumbling credibility. We negotiated a transition agreement that included a formal public apology, a retraction of all allegations made against me, and independent oversight moving forward. As we left the boardroom, my attorney smiled. "That went even better than expected," she said. "They're desperate," I replied simply. "The NIH suspended all their active grants pending review. Without certification and compliance, Horizon's future is on the line." That evening, I received a text from Nathan. "They announced it at the all-staff meeting today. Evan's gone, Hale's gone, and they said you were right all along." A few people even applauded. Wish you could have seen it. I smiled at the message, but didn't reply immediately. Instead, I powered up my laptop and began drafting a detailed transition blueprint, my final contribution to the lab I had once devoted my life to. Sometimes, I realized, redemption isn't about revenge. It's about helping rebuild something stronger, even if you're not staying to watch it grow. I hadn't expected where my fight would lead. Yet 6 months later, I found myself seated before the House Committee on Science, Space, and Technology, preparing to testify on research ethics in privately funded laboratories. Across the hearing room, Evan Lorne and 3 former MedCore executives sat at a separate table, their faces pale and drawn. They had already been indicted on federal charges related to grant fraud. Now they faced something almost worse: public accountability. "Ms. Clay," Congresswoman Valeria Diaz began, "could you describe the circumstances that led you to uncover these compliance violations?" For the next hour, I spoke plainly. Of the pressure to cut corners, of the falsified records, of the betrayal, and the cost of standing firm. "And in your professional opinion," another committee member asked, "how common are these practices?" I looked them straight in the eye. "More common than anyone wants to admit. The pressure to secure funding and produce marketable results often overrides scientific integrity," I said clearly into the microphone. "That's why we urgently need stronger whistleblower protections and stricter oversight for private research institutions." My testimony was broadcast across national news outlets. Clips of my calm, methodical statements contrasted sharply with Evan Lorne's defensive stammering and the evasive, hollow responses from the MedCorps executives. Public opinion shifted almost overnight. A new wave of support for increased regulation of privately funded research facilities swept across the media and political landscape. When I finally stepped down from the witness stand, Dr. Meredith Lang was waiting for me just beyond the hearing doors. She reached out and squeezed my hand. "You didn't just expose Horizon's failures," she whispered. "You sparked a national conversation about scientific ethics." As we made our way into the crowded hallway, reporters surged forward with cameras and microphones. In the commotion, I caught a glimpse across the lobby. Literally everyone was watching me. His expression was a complicated tangle of anger, regret, and defeat. Our eyes met briefly, and then he turned away, vanishing into the crowd. He had lost everything. His reputation, his career, and soon, most likely, his freedom. Meanwhile, I had gained something far more lasting: vindication and a new beginning. 1 year after that fateful day at Horizon, I stood at a podium inside the largest lecture hall at the University of Washington, addressing a packed room of students, faculty, and visiting researchers. The topic of my keynote presentation? Ethical guardianship, protecting integrity in scientific research. "The pressures you'll face in your careers will be very real," I told them. "Funding shortages, publication deadlines, corporate demands. But the moment you sacrifice scientific integrity is the moment you stop being a scientist and become something else entirely." The room was silent, attentive. From my new position at the university, I had developed a comprehensive training program, now being adopted by research institutions nationwide. My experience had been transformed from a painful memory into a practical blueprint for future generations. After the lecture, as the audience began to filter out, a familiar face approached me through the crowd. Nathan Kim, my former lab technician from Horizon. "Professor Clay," he called out with a broad grin. "That was incredible, so inspiring." "Just Marissa, these days," I corrected him with a smile. "How's everything back at Horizon?" "Completely different," he said. "The new leadership team implemented every protocol you designed. We're smaller now, but the work feels real again." We chatted for a few minutes more. Horizon Biotech had survived, humbled, reformed, and far more cautious. MedCorps, on the other hand, had collapsed under the weight of lawsuits and fines exceeding hundreds of millions of dollars. As for Evan Lorne and 2 MedCorps executives, federal prison sentences. Dr. Hale, he had avoided prison by cooperating fully, but his career was over. "I've been offered a research position here at the university," Nathan said hesitantly. "Though, I was wondering, would you consider being my advisor?" I smiled, remembering the young technician who had stood by me when others stayed silent. "I'd be honored, Nathan." Later that evening, a new email lit up my inbox, a notification from the Journal of Scientific Integrity. My article on reforming research ethics had been accepted for publication. Change was happening. Slow, stubborn, but real. And, for the first time in a long while, I knew I hadn't just survived this storm, I had helped rebuild the sky. If you've stayed with me through this journey, I just want to say thank you. This story wasn't just about me. It was about anyone who has ever been overlooked, underestimated, or pressured to compromise their values for someone else's gain. I would love to hear from you. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to stand up for what was right, even when it cost you something? Have you ever been made to feel like integrity didn't matter, only to realize later that it was the most important thing you had? Please share your thoughts in the comments. I would be honored to read your experiences and reflections. Your story matters. And if you found strength, hope, or even just a spark of inspiration in what I shared, I ask you to subscribe to the channel. Together, we can build a community where courage, truth, and resilience are celebrated, not punished. If there's one piece of advice I can leave you with, it's this: never trade your integrity for approval. It might seem easier in the short term to stay silent, to let things slide, or to protect your own comfort. But real respect, real impact, comes when you stand firm, even if your voice shakes. Even if you stand alone. Integrity isn't just about grand gestures or headline moments. It's about the small decisions made quietly every day, when no one is watching. Stay true to yourself. You're building something far stronger than a resume or a reputation. You're building a life you can be proud of.